Welcome back. Today we have another Patreon requested review, of which I'm insanely grateful for, and not just because I get to stop looking at the Final Destination films. So thank you to Jeff McConnell and his two brothers. Today we'll be looking at Pandorum, a film that was supposed to kick off a trilogy, but was so poorly received, any plans for a sequel were instantly wiped out. But was it a blessing in disguise? The film begins on a particularly depressing note, as we're told how Earth became overpopulated by 2153, leading to a lack of food and water, creating conflict. But hope, in the form of the Elysium, a spaceship, launched towards an Earth-like planet called Tarnis, as we see the bridge crew receive a message from Earth of a simple good luck, as the vessel is now all that's left of humanity. Now, as setups go, that was pretty fucking good. Brief and to the point, and with plenty of information left out for the film to fill in. It's a good hook, and the stakes are set pretty high from the get-go. And as we'll see, the film is going to pull back from that with a relatively quiet opening. Well, apart from this. Our main character is Corporal Bauer here, and after his wake-up call from hell, he has the classic "I have amnesia," not even knowing his name, as the electrics fail in the room, forcing him to use a glow stick to look around. First finding an empty pod marked Cooper, and another one still in use marked Peyton, who doesn't look like he'll wake up anytime soon. So Bauer goes through a not very typical morning wake-up routine, first by removing his second layer of skin. It raises significant questions about the stasis pod. It wasn't filled with any kind of liquid, so what caused that honestly pretty disgusting byproduct? But in this case, I like the fact that it raises questions about the technology, because in science fiction, as long as the technology looks like it makes sense within that universe, then that's the main concern for me. Bauer tries to unlock and then bash open Peyton's pod, but it's surprisingly sturdy, remaining closed, so he decides to finish his morning routine using a laser shaver, which is a pretty cool concept, even though I have no idea how he keeps his face from sloughing off. The new Precision Laser, the closest shave in all the universe. We guarantee it. The ship suddenly shakes and roars as the power turns on and is temporarily unstable, which definitely can't be a good thing. However, this does activate Peyton's pod, who receives his own wake-up call.
Did you get that fucking light out of my eyes?
Sorry, sir.
And yeah, that probably doesn't help either. He does have some information though, such as they were due to take over from the previous flight crew, yet they didn't show up for duty, meaning something is very wrong. But using a hand crank, Peyton is able to get some equipment working. I mentioned it briefly before, but again I have to compliment the film on its clever designs of all its technology. It's like a cross between alien-style practicality and almost Apple-like sleekness. It's very distinctive, but also pretty realistic, because it would make sense to implement some kind of manual power unit. It just shows the care and thought that went into these designs. Peyton tries to get anything on the comms, but it's all ominously dead, and is reminded by Bauer they're part of Flight Team 5. However, if you're very quick, or bother to freeze frame like I did, you can see Peyton is actually part of Flight Team 4, which is a subtle hint to something else going on. They're also reminded of the pod marked Cooper, which is empty, and that's when the power goes crazy once again. Bauer has a few decent ideas about what's wrong with the reactor, so agrees with Peyton that he should get out, and after stocking up on glow sticks, climbs through the vents. And it's a minor detail, but I like that the vents are tight, claustrophobic, and difficult to climb through. Very rarely do you see that in films. It's just more detailed to suggest that this ship is an actual working piece of machinery. Bauer makes his way through the vent, and back in the control room, the power continues to go haywire. Bauer knows exactly what's happening to the reactor. His memory might not have returned, but his training is there. Peyton also hears strange noises around the room as the power goes out completely. Bauer panics slightly from the lack of communication, but Peyton gets back and calms him down with a pretty funny moment.
This may not be the best time to tell you, but I got the door open.
You're fucking kidding me.
Yeah, I'm kidding you.
He does mention that they've potentially been in hypersleep for at least 8 years, and more problems arise when Bauer realizes he's at an angle and falls, getting trapped. But he should be fine, since he's reached the end of the vent. It's all uphill from here. Well, that is sure to hamper his confidence slightly. However, Bauer does eventually manage to get the vent open, finally out. That scene was incredibly well done, as it slowly ramps up the tension as Bauer becomes more stuck and claustrophobic, with the camera's focus concentrated on close-ups, to really instill that choking feeling in the audience. It then breaks that tension with some comedy, and then hits you with a corpse, just to say, yeah, this guy tried it before. It didn't work out very well. It just goes to show the care and skill that went into the writing of this film. Kinda makes the whole no sequel issue even worse. Bauer finds himself in a bootlocker, falling out of the thing, causing the communicator to break, and in the corridor the ominous atmosphere builds, due to the dark and eerie silence, as the two men try to regain contact. That's when Bauer sees a woman prying a door open, who runs away when spotted, but he catches up to her pretty quickly. All he wants is answers from her, but when she doesn't respond, he finds out why. Before Bauer has time to figure out what the fuck, the woman knocks him down and holds a knife to his neck. Oddly, she wants his shoes, but something else appears behind them and the woman, Nadia, pulls a Batman, disappearing. Bauer can only see the blue glow of weapons, but when the corpse is pulled away by one of them, he doesn't stick around to get a closer look, hiding in a side corridor, and as they move past, he sees one of them. And they don't look friendly. The alien creatures for the film are pretty understated in terms of design, which works for the plot. But also, the design itself gives a lot of good questions. Are they human? Are they some kind of alien invader? It's very hard to tell, so it all nicely adds to the mystery of what's going on. Bauer is backed into a corner and has only the locker he came from to hide in, as the particularly drooly creature searches for him, which is the exact moment Peyton gets the comm working. Bauer is quick to shut it off, but not quick enough, as the creature attacks with its spear, eventually dragging away a body. Cooper's body, to be precise. I guess it's not too fussed about getting human jerky instead of something fresh. Bauer explains the what the fuck situation to Peyton, with them both suspecting the hunters, as I'll call them, are not human. Peyton has figured out that the ship is a settler ship, transporting people to the new planet, and Bauer recalls as a child how Tarnis was discovered, with a near-identical atmosphere to Earth. He also remembers his wife and wants to find her on board, but Peyton convinces him to focus on saving the ship first. The fact that Bauer saw the discovery of Tarnis when he was a child really emphasizes how long Earth has been in trouble, and how important this whole mission is too. It gives a nice sense of scale and time. It doesn't disclose too much about the world, it's very minimalist, which I prefer. Otherwise the film might get bogged down in all the details. After his close encounter of the stabby kind, Bauer quite prudently finds a weapons locker, containing a non-lethal riot gun. Non-lethal makes sense, considering the only potential rioters would be the cargo. Also, I love that even the weapon has a kinetic generator, which shows a nice continuity between all the film's technology. Once he's equipped, Peyton sets a path for Bauer directly to the reactor, and while finding his way around, he spots something moving, wisely choosing to avoid it. He uses that time to ask Peyton about Pandorum, which is a form of space-based psychosis. This prompts Peyton to recall a similar ship to the Elysium, the Eden, where one of the flight crew lost his mind and was convinced the mission was evil, and through the turn of a key, ejected every single hypersleep pod into space. So Pandorum is a pretty serious thing. And although the film is named that, and it does have some relevancy on the plot, it by no means has any kind of focus. Seems odd to name the film that, when Elysium, for example, would be just as effective. Also, I want to talk about that flashback for a second. We see how the officer managed to jettison all the pods. Why wasn't there some kind of failsafe so the ship wouldn't eject people into an endless void? Also, if the pods were powered and had some kind of rudimentary propulsion, then I could understand it more, but then it wouldn't be much of a tragedy either. I just can't think of a reason for a ship to need to be able to jettison pods into space. Why build that functionality? Bauer gets into another section of the ship with something following, unknown to him. However, he sees the same situation again of someone hanging up in the middle of the corridor, yet upon further inspection, it's a different person, alive and hostile. But more importantly, it's motherfucking Norman Reedus! Obviously though, this being give or take a year before The Walking Dead, Reedus getting a bit part that lasts in the region of a few minutes is not that unusual for the time, but might be a bit unusual to see nowadays. Bauer calms Reedus down, finding he's from his successor team, Flight Team 6, and Reedus assumes Bauer is from a rescue crew, but pretty much tells him he's on his own when he hears the hunters, and covers himself in a liquid from machinery to mask his scent. Coincidentally, the same tactic he would use in The Walking Dead. Must be where he got his survival skills from. When the hunters show up, Bauer first thinks to use the stun gun, but Peyton orders him to get the hell out of there, and he and Reedus try and hide, with Bauer falling below deck, and Reedus, well, that's pretty much all for him, as he's captured by the hunters. Bauer attempts to use the stun gun, but doesn't realize he's behind a wall of glass, which attracts the attention of the alpha male, as the rest disembowel Reedus, forcing Bauer to run. And I'm pretty sure when a Norman Reedus dies, 1,000,000 Walking Dead fans cry out in anguish and are suddenly silenced. Bauer runs with the hunters close behind, but he should really start looking where he's going, as Bauer trips and falls, again, getting a wire caught round his leg, which instead of shearing his foot off at the ankle, he somehow manages to swing onto the underside of the platform to hide. But one thing these creatures are is persistent, as they start to pull Bauer up. Luckily for him, the person who's been following him cuts him down and locks the door. Unfortunately, the guy doesn't speak English, but it's clear he's there to help as he gives Bauer the stun gun back, showing his tattoo saying he's part of the agriculture team. Meanwhile, back with Peyton, he's trying to bash his way onto the bridge, not really doing much, but he also hears strange noises all around him, getting pretty paranoid, and even gets a nosebleed, which is a sign of Pandorum. Although, why a mental disorder would have physical symptoms, I don't know. Bauer has found the room where they keep all the cargo containers, and that's where Nadia from before appears again for a fight with Bauer. Fortunately, he has his own bodyguard to fight her for him, but Bauer just says fuck it, firing the stun gun in the air to get them to stop. At this point, you can really see how the two writers interwoven their separate scripts together. Travis Malloy wrote a script about a prison ship. Our two fighters were originally prisoners and Bauer a non-prisoner. And Christian Alvert saw similarities with his script about amnesiac astronauts on a settler ship and combined the two. Sometimes when a film does that, you can really see the seams in the finished product. But here, they really did a good job of making a whole greater than the sum of its parts. Bauer eventually gets the two to relax and work together as they're forced to move on by the sound of hunters. He convinces Nadia to help him find the reactor by saying he can fly the ship. So she takes them to where she's been holding up. And while the hunters get closer, Nadia looks like she's doing some kind of Jedi mind trick to open the door, but really she's just waiting for the power to fluctuate, allowing the door panel to work, and for them to escape the hunters. Inside Nadia's hideout, which looks a lot nicer than the other parts of the ship, she tells Bauer that the Elysium is not only transporting people, but also every plant, and I assume animal, from Earth. But 30% already is lost. There's now another thing that's dependent on Bauer getting the reactor working again, raising those stakes to near biblical levels now. She also offers Bauer something to eat, and well, at least it's fresh food. And Ben Foster insisted on eating a real cricket for that scene, so I have to commend his dedication on that one. Peyton, meanwhile, is starting to lose it even further, hearing noises, but then, surprisingly, a man emerges from a mess of cables, Corporal Gallo, who says he's come from the bridge, but he's pretty hysterical and not really up for talking. And once again, if you're very observant, you can see that same man, Corporal Gallo, on the bridge at the start of the film. It's more important for later, but I do enjoy how the film rewards the more attentive viewer. The others have made it to where the hypersleep pods are kept, with Bauer noting how a lot of them are empty, because this is the hunter's favourite restaurant. However, he performs his party trick again and falls through the floor, with Nadia accidentally following him, finding themselves basically in a river of hunter shit and dead bodies, which is actually the preferable place to be as the hunters show up feeling a little peckish. Once they're confident the hunters have left, they leave the cesspool, but Bauer gets jumped by one of them, and a fight ensues. He pulls a pipe out of a pod to attack the hunter, and all three of them gang up and stab it to death in a really brutal way, which hammers home the kill or be killed nature of the ship now. It took the three of them to take one down, so when the alpha male calls the rest of them, they have to run. The hunters are stopped slightly by cannibalizing the dead one, but then this poor unfortunate bastard wins the wake-up call from hell game, as he's ejected from his pod and immediately set upon and eaten by the hunters, with Bauer trying but unable to help. Also, the actor playing the guy who died there was Ben Foster's brother, which I'm sure didn't cause any kind of sibling rivalry. Back in the control room, Peyton continues to attempt contact with Bauer, and Gallo has relaxed, but is still very reluctant to reveal anything. It becomes creepier when he admits to defending himself from his crewmates, who went crazy with Pandorum, so he's possibly pretty unhinged. Speaking of unhinged, the others have escaped the hunters and found themselves in the lair of another passenger, a former cook, who acts pretty erratic, but he allows them to stay, even making them something to eat, although his menu could use a little work.
Herb and butter dog shit.
Seriously. And while recuperating, Bauer and Nadia discuss what the hunters might be. Bauer thinks they have come from the lab, but Nadia thinks they're people who have evolved to adapt to the conditions on the ship, speculating that they've been asleep a few hundred years longer than they were supposed to. Which I really like. But what's really clever is that the film forms an explanation for how these people were able to evolve in just a few hundred years. It explains that the hypersleep bunks have chemicals that are designed to jumpstart evolution, so that the people would more easily adapt to the conditions on Tarnis. It's a small detail, but it's enough to eliminate any possible plot hole. Back with Peyton, he's ready with a sedative for Gallo, clearly nervous about his behaviour, and becomes more hostile when he talks about Pandorum again, defending what he did on the bridge. Peyton still grabs a weapon though. And that's when the cook gives us the lowdown on just what the hell has been going on board the ship. And despite it being a big plot dump moment for the film, the way it's done is very informative and very clever, as we get both flashbacks but also the cook's strange cave painting scratches. There's also Gallo's interpretation of what happened at the same time too. And this is where the film becomes darker, because the cook informs us that after the ship got word of Earth's destruction, one of the flight crew, Gallo, went mental and killed the others, which would be bad enough. But then he took the sleeping people and made them fight, kill and eat each other in the cargo holds. The hunters weren't an accident, they were created by Gallo, which is a pretty interesting and dark twist for the film. But not its last. After that piece of exposition, it's then revealed that the cook has himself gone cannibal, as he gasses and knocks out the three. Elsewhere, Peyton seems to have started feeling the effects of Pandorum, and once again, a clever clue is given to the more attentive out there, because Gallo is wearing Peyton's name tag, which again is more stuff for later on. Our group soon wake up tied upside down by the cook, ready for butchering, and he even stabs Nadia in the side. Luckily though, Bauer is able to convince the guy that only he can save the ship, telling him the ship's got less than an hour before total shutdown, which convinces him to let them down, but he's far from being on their side. After that ordeal, Bauer regains communication with Peyton, who checks the reactor, and they've got a 47-minute countdown to fix it. While on their way there, one of the hunter's children appears, but they don't kill it, which just gives it the opportunity to get the adult hunter's attention, forcing the group to run again. They find themselves in another hypersleep bay, where everyone is either gone or dead. Bauer remembers that his wife isn't on the flight because she left him, hence why he joined the mission, as we get a brief, interesting glimpse at dystopian Earth. However, Bauer also remembers Peyton's wife, cluing him into what's going on. At the same time, the penny has started to drop for Peyton as well, with Gallo getting increasingly unhinged, telling him they need to eject from the ship in one of the pods, leading to an argument. And at the core, Bauer and the others arrive at the reactor, which, for an incredibly vital part of the ship, has only a single flimsy metal walkway to get to it. Yeah, I'm not surprised the thing's not working right if they don't consider it particularly important to get access to the thing. Since Bauer loves his party trick so much, he falls from the walkway, again, as it breaks, forcing the others to keep it from falling, as the hunters have made a nest in the reactor. So to help the guy holding the walkway, Bauer jumps down into the lion's den, and Nadia reaches the reactor and starts fixing it. Elsewhere, Peyton is having a bit of a weird moment with Gallo, ranting and raving about wanting to leave the ship. And both Peyton's weapons and the sedative mysteriously move from the desk to where Gallo is, smashing up the mirrors with it. Everything is getting pretty hectic at this point. The film's in full climax mode after all. But I do like how the film balances the horror action stuff with Bauer, and with Peyton, it's almost a psychological thriller. Two movies happening concurrently, but they don't detract from each other. And Bauer takes a leaf out of Redis's book and covers himself in rags and radioactive runoff from the reactor, allowing him to traverse the nest relatively safely. And Peyton's problems have gotten worse as Gallo forces him at sedative point to eject him in a pod, which I honestly don't see a downside. But Peyton just causes an ejection test, locking Gallo inside for his own good. Bauer makes his way across the sleeping hunters and nearly escapes unnoticed, until the cook drops a flashlight alerting them all. It's amazing just how useless that guy is. The walkway is dropped, which distracts the hunters from Bauer, giving him the opportunity to fix the reactor, which he does with 3 seconds left. And as an added bonus, vaporizes the hunters below. Now that power is restored, Peyton gets to work on opening the bridge door. Meanwhile, there's a big showdown happening with the alpha male, and it's actually a pretty good fight. It's brutal and visceral, with the alpha biting the guy, but he does manage to kill it and win. Yay! But what's the thing to actually kill him? See? No matter what species, kids are fucking evil, man. The group are running from the pack, with the cook making more of a case for his imminent death by locking the door and trapping them. And with Peyton, it's all revealed, as Gallo somehow breaks out of the pod and fights with him, trying to give him the sedative. Peyton and Gallo suddenly merge together as he takes the shot of sedative himself. Peyton, or in reality Gallo, is the man who did all this, and the villain, as he's now regained his memory. But at least his first act is somewhat worthwhile.
Yes, you fly too.
Not sure how that killed him, but fuck it, I'll take whatever to get rid of him. The others get to the control room, finding the dead cook, and Bauer knows he's not Peyton either now, as they get on the bridge to find Gallo sitting waiting for them. They demand to know where they are, but he admits that even he doesn't know, opening the blast doors, showing them that there are no stars. And Gallo, who's gained quite the superiority complex, considers himself God at this point, trying to persuade Bauer to embrace the madness, which he starts by hallucinating the hunters breaking in. However, the final reveal is made as luminescent sea life are seen out of the windows, as the ship has been on Tarnis the entire time. Which, come to think of it, considering how the power was going crazy and stuff, it was probably a big tip-off that they had already landed, that there was no part of the ship without gravity. Bauer fights with Gallo as his hallucinations continue, seeing hunters break in, and Nadia attacks Gallo, who holds her at knife point, about to kill her, but Bauer is distracted by his hallucinations, firing the stun gun at a panel, which causes it to fly off and break the window, snapping him out of it, but also letting water flood the bridge, presumably killing Gallo in the process. They get inside a pod, and now, finally, the ejection function makes sense, as the pod leaves the ship and reaches the surface. For a pretty dark and depressing movie, it ends on an upbeat note, as the rest of the still functioning pods on the ship are ejected, leading to a message informing us of the population of Tannis Year 1. Which I do like. If the dark, depressing film had an equally dark and depressing ending, I think that would have been too much for me. So that was Pandorum, and it really makes me wish we got the trilogy this film deserved. This film might not have had the highest budget or the biggest stars, but it's still one damn good film, and for me, exactly what I like from sci-fi movies. I'm a huge fan of Event Horizon, and this film definitely feels similar in tone. The acting is top-notch, with Ben Foster playing Bauer with a real humanity. He's not a perfect hero or a muscle-bound marine, he's a survivor in a tough situation. And of course, Dennis Quaid is a real standout, starting at the same place as Bauer, but slowly being beaten down by his own madness until he embraces it and becomes a really convincing villain. The plans for the trilogy would have been to have a prequel of Earth Before the Elysium and a sequel of Settlers on Tarnis. And I'm not sure how they would have pulled it off, but I think I would have at least been very interested to watch. Sadly, it's very, very unlikely to ever happen, which is a shame. Oh, and speaking of actors, I forgot to mention Norman Reedus. He was here too. Anyway, I've got some more sci-fi movies on the way, but next time will be something very different for me and the channel. And don't forget that this episode was brought to you by the kind donator at Patreon, and if you would like to support the show, please consider donating. The link is in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.